The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as practical following the meeting. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing this meeting either from the committee room or from remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that their mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda. I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their microphones and cameras on at that point. If any members are attending remote, please ensure that your camera is kept on during the course of the meeting. Whether in the committee room or remote, if any members or officers wish to raise a point or question, they should press the hands up icon on the screen and at the top right hand side of the Microsoft Teams windows. And I will come to you in the order I receive the request. Please lower your hands once you have finished. The chat button has been disabled for the meeting. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and where necessary will mute those not being used. I would also ask the officers to introduce themselves as and when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. They too should ensure microphones and cameras are switched off or not in use, please. I will now proceed to the agenda of the business. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you. Sorry, Chair.
I can't see that far. Just
Councillor Williams.
Councillor Williams, please.
Thank you very much. Not apologies, but my camera option is blanked out. I can't click on it to take it off so you can see me. So I wonder if, I don't know if there's anyone still in there who can help with this. I'm trying to get it to work.
That's fine. Hopefully that somebody will come and see you or respond to you. Thank you, Councillor Williams. Oscar?
Good morning, Chair. I've received apologies from Councillor Hal Williams, Councillor Rees-Good and Claire Marchant.
Thank you. Agenda item 2. Are there any declaration of interest, please? Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, thanks very much. Good morning, Chair. My long-standing personal conflict of interest in my full-time employment is for an Equalities charity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Spanswick?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just declare personal interest, a family member works within the unit being discussed today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Approval of the minutes?
Happy to. Second.
Thank you, Councillor Gebbing. Councillor Spanswick? I hand over to Kirsty. Are you presenting the report?
I am. Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving myself, Kirsty Williams, Community Safety Partnership Manager, and Wendy Briggs, the Service Manager for ASIA, the opportunity to provide Cabinet Committee for Equalities with an annual update on the services provided by the in-house domestic abuse service, incorporating the work being done with both victims and perpetrators, and information regarding the range of domestic abuse related services delivered by our third sector partners. As this update will demonstrate, the ASIA Domestic Abuse Service in Bridgend is meeting the purpose of the Violence Against Women, Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence Wales Act of 2015 and delivering against the national strategic aims for the Cwmtaf Morgannwg region. Information contained in this report and our update today spans from April 2021, when the ASIA service was established, to December 2023, the end of Q3, and highlights the ways in which ASIA are trying to engage and support a diverse range of people. For context, there are several areas of policy and law in the LRSV arena. I'm going to keep referring to violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence as VODA SV for clarity. The UK government defines domestic abuse as any incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive or threatening behaviour, violence or abuse against those aged 16 or over who have seen intimate partners or family members regardless of gender. There are many different forms of domestic abuse. These include, but are not limited to, coercive controlling behaviour, emotionally, psychological abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse, and harassment and stalking. The VODA SV Wales Act of 2015's purpose is to improve arrangements for the prevention of gender-based violence, domestic abuse and sexual violence, arrangements for the protection of victims of gender-based violence, domestic abuse and sexual violence, and support for people affected by gender-based violence, domestic abuse and sexual violence. At a regional, i.e. Cwmtach Morgannwg level, we have the strategic aims as set out in the local VODA SV strategy required under the VODA SV Act. The Cwmtach Morgannwg VODA SV Regional Strategic and Commissioning Partnership developed its aims to be consistent with the national strategy and to meet local need, including reflecting those of Bridgend. These are in the delivery plan available as Appendix 1. This is a live document, so you will notice some of the boxes are blank, and it's owned by the regional VODA SV lead. The version shared with this report was based on the update at the most recent meeting, so it isn't a complete picture for the year. The aims for the region are as follows. 1, to increase awareness of violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence across the CTM population. Aim 2, to break the generational cycle of VODA SV behaviour in families by promoting healthy relationships in children and young people. Aim 3, to hold perpetrators to account for their actions and support them to change their behaviour. Aim 4, ensure services are designed and commissioned to meet the needs of the CTM population. And Aim 5, ensure that services are fit for purpose and quality assured. As I mentioned, these aims are informed by local needs and our local delivery practices. There has been discussions about revisiting a local VODA SV group, but this is currently managed within Bridgend Community Safety Partnership arrangements, and there are strong governance arrangements around the Community Safety Partnership and the regional VODA SV steering group, as well as involvement with local and regional safeguarding boards. Turning specifically to how we operate in Bridgend, at BCBC's cabinet meeting in October 2020, it was agreed to bring the externally commissioned support for community domestic abuse service in-house and to approve the development of an integrated first point of contact support in the community service for all victims of domestic abuse based on need as well as risk. A comprehensive needs assessment was completed in early 2020, which informed this decision, and the new in-house service started on the 1st of May 2021. A restructured service was implemented in April 2022, following recruitment and union consultations within the restructure process. And a VODA SV service manager was recruited, who commenced the role in July 2021, along with a MARA and VODA SV business. Every person within the team that are dealing directly with victims are fully IDFA qualified and accredited, and any new team members who do not hold the qualification complete the training. There are also specialisms within the team, which I'll come back to later in the update. The ASIA Suites drop-in service remains in civic offices, as well as in community settings, including, but not limited to, Hartshorn House, High Life Centre, Garrow Valley, probation offices, and pension offices, job centres. We're also constantly looking to expand on that. ASIA has a dedicated high-risk service that ensures all high-risk victims or those submitted through public protection notice take priority and are easily identifiable. Medium risk and standard risk are picked up by the triage service that works very closely with and alongside the high-risk team. This ensures better communication within the team, continuity and consistency of support, as well as unit risks. It doesn't work across any service within the team, have regular case reviews, line management supervision and clinical supervision. As shown in point 2.3, referrals to the service have increased over the course of this report. Due in part to the increased awareness of ASIA and the services on offer, demonstrating how we are achieving Aim 1 of the regional plan on increasing the awareness of the VODA SV agenda. There was an increase in referrals, which accepted support of nearly 55% from 21-22 23 financial year compared to the previous. Work has been done to promote awareness of VODA SV and the ASIA service with partners. The Voucher SV e-learning is now a mandatory module for all BCBC employees, and we've been doing training with PCSOs, midwives, perinatal groups, A&E staff about recognising the signs and way to access support. To signpost on. The service also works with mother and baby groups, and we are keen to expand this training and awareness with more groups, including elected members. ASIA has worked hard to become an inclusive and bespoke service rather than a one solution for everybody. A Safe Live review identified the service lacked an older person's info. Due to the complex nature of abuse within older people, including cases with dementia and where perpetrators may be a carer, the service works very closely with adult safeguarding and New Pathways, which is a crisis and sexual abuse support service, who also have an older person's independent sexual violence advisor. The numbers are lower for older people being supported by the service, but often the cases are more complex. So I'm going to hand over to Wendy, who will give an example of a case study.
Thank you everybody. My name is Wendy Briggs, the Voucher SV manager. I'm just going to go through a case that we've had within the service for an older person. Obviously the person has been anonymised, so there's no references to this person at all. Basically, this is a woman in her 70s who first contacted the service for advice and the police in 2023. She met her husband when she was very young and had been married for just 6 weeks when her husband first hit her. The abuse continued over the course of the marriage, including punching, kicking, pushing, hitting with objects, and incidences of non-fatal strangulation, which at that time were never recognised. The victim rarely reported these incidents to the police as she felt they were her fault. She was blamed for her husband's bad temper, and they would often go days without speaking. Things escalated when they'd been communicating by leaving notes for each other. Notes from the husband had become increasingly abusive and threatening. The victim was restricted on what parts of the house she was able to access, and her husband was subsequently arrested and given bail conditions not to contact the victim at all. During this time, there was evidence of coercive controlling behaviour and intimidating behaviour. So the challenges to this was the abuse was normal for the victim, and she had learned to minimise and accept it as her fault. Her husband showed complete disregard for his bail conditions. And the victim became extremely confused, leading to her ending all of the support from all agencies. And this is a victim that's gone through this abuse for, well, since she was a young woman and now in her 70s. So the coercive control throughout that whole time, and it did make her confused. She constantly questioned, is this my fault? What have I done? You know, if I just do this, this might change. How can I appease this person? So this was constantly going on. So eventually, with all of that confusion and ongoing coercive control from the perpetrator, trying to get her to drop the charges, eventually she became, it led her to ending all of her support from all agencies. So she dropped out of engagement from everybody, contacted the police and the courts, insisting the charges against her husband be dropped, declined a restraining order, and allowed her husband to return to the home. Since the husband returned to the home, the abuse has continued and escalated. And I think it's fair to say as well, because it's something we always need to be looking at, is, I'm not sure if anyone's aware of Dr. J. Monckton Smith's research around the stages of a timeline that leads up to a homicide. And that's something we constantly look at with our high-risk victims. Where are they on that timeline? Are there any concerning avenues? But this one, there's particular concern around stage 6 and stage 7. So the solution from that, and just to reiterate that, there's only 8 stages of that timeline. So when you're looking at somebody who's stage 6 and stage 7, you're looking at, you know, significant concerns. So the solution from that, when the abuse continued and escalated, she started to re-engage, which was brilliant. With the support of RIDVA, the victim is now learning about the traits of a perpetrator and is comparing this to what she's experienced throughout all of these years, and is slowly recognising how abusive her relationship has been. All the professionals have now been made aware of the coercion from her husband and have reinstated support. Police are liaising with criminal prosecution services to reopen the original charges, and the victim is fully engaging in this. A plan has been agreed for her safety and well-being, with regular updates being recorded, and the victim has also been referred to a local community navigator to address any isolation. and is receiving calls from professionals to check on her safety and offer support continuously. The result is the victim has gone from a state of self-blame, but this is shifting from blaming herself for the abuser to blaming herself and not realising sooner. And again, there's still a lot of work being done with that. And she's feeling she's let others down by her actions. The victim has decided not to let her husband back into her life, and is now kind of opening her life up and trying to rebuild it. She's now got pets and she's purchased a car to help making her feel less isolated. And she's learning about the traits of the perpetrator alongside the IDVA, and will complete the Freedom Programme when she's able to. So yeah, so that's it's been a complete roller coaster in this particular case. And she's been with us for some time, but I think it shows the journey of where a victim can go and how we've managed to bring that back around.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you for the case study. And can I just say to all the members, if these case studies can be quite emotional and touch, So if anybody would like to come and speak to us, please do so. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Gavin.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm happy to move the report. But I do have a couple of questions and observations, really.
Before you do, sorry, Councillor Gabby, had you finished with your presentation of your report? I didn't think
I was going to go through the rest of it.
All right, okay, well, I'll wait. I'll wait.
Thank you. I will be handing over to Wendy for 2 more case studies as we go through the report. It's just we thought it best whilst we were talking about older people to have a case study to bring it to life.
And I think it's just giving, like, I wasn't aware we were going to have case studies. It's just like a health and safety message, because it can trigger something for members here. So
Thank you, Chair.
I just wanted them to know they can come and talk to us if they need to. Great. Thank you, Kirsty. Back to you.
So returning to the summary, there is a dedicated court IDVA who works very closely with the Criminal Prosecution Service, Witness Service and court officers, and supports all victims through the criminal justice system. The remote evidence suite in my stake has been a real success and has been welcomed by victims that have utilised it. We have a children IDVA who supports those up to the age of 15 who have experienced familial abuse. The CHIDVA is based in Safe Merthyr Tydfil, and the ASIA service has recently recruited a dedicated children and young person worker who can work with any young people that fall through the gap, such as those identified as not being in education, employment or training, those affected by intimate abuse, and also those that are displaying unhealthy behaviours that could potentially form into perpetrator traits. As the role develops, we will also be looking to improve working with schools, specifically around healthy relationship. So this is directly contributing to the second regional aim of breaking the generational cycle of adversary behaviour in families by promoting healthy relationships in children and young people. A service with BAUSO to support Black, minority, ethnic and migrant victims was also trialled within the county borough, but referrals didn't warrant the service. The ASIA team are all IDVA qualified and trained in the ASIA team are all IDVA trained and qualified in female genital mutilation and honour-based violence. The service continues to link in with BAUSO for training, advice and guidance to ensure the team are up to date with emerging themes. Links are also in place with APOCO, apologies if I mispronounced that, and they're a service working to help with women and children in the Polish community. The service has a dedicated male victim IDVA, and it is largely down to this dedicated role that engagement with male victims has been more successful, and more male victims are now accessing support, including a male victim focus group. 3.13 highlights how the proportion of men accessing the service has doubled from March 2021 to December 2023, with male victims accounting for over 20% of ASIA service users. The proportion of non-binary people being supported remains small. There is a male victim focus group designed to be victim-led. The first cohort of 23 attended 6 sessions and decided what they would like to see with other agencies in Bridgend that could specifically help them and what they could offer within the community for additional support. Guest speakers have given an overview of their services and what programmes, activities and support they had to offer, including Connecting Dads, Employability, BARVO, Community Navigators and Men's Shed. These sessions have discussed the impact of stereotypes when it comes to domestic abuse and access and support, securing child contact, toxic masculinity and their experiences of engaging with services. And we'll be starting a new session of of these male victim focus groups in early April. It's also worth noting that recent recruitment to the ASIA team has had a male service user sitting on that interview panel. So I'll hand over to Wendy again for a male victim case study.
Thank you. Okay, so the victim accessed the service via a drop-in when he presented as homeless due to domestic abuse. The IDVA established he was fleeing, needing to leave their home due to the wife's abuse and alcohol use. The DASH-RIC, which is the Domestic Abuse Stalk and Harassment Risk Identification Checklist, completed by the IDVA, scored 13, which is classed as a medium risk, but on the higher side of it. The victim explained that his wife will drink substantial quantities when she comes home from work. He disclosed that this is when the abuse escalates and she will try to argue with him. This can escalate into physical attacks, and the victim said to avoid this, he would go to bed, but he did not want to report anything to the police. The victim stated that his wife does not remember what she's done, which he believes this is due to the alcohol usage. And the victim then went on to say his wife is never remorseful and does not want to change, so he feels he has no choice but to leave to ensure the safety. The IDVA and the victim collaboratively identified support needs as the following: support with housing and emergency housing, multi-agency referral form for family support, financial needs for the victim as they had joint bank accounts. The victim was at significant harm from the abuse, and having left the relationship, there was a significant chance of escalation. And the victim stated he felt shame because he was a male and feared his wife due to her abusive behaviour. Following the victim, and I would say that I think that's quite pivotal. I think that's what stops a lot of males coming forward, is that shame, because they feel that, especially if it's female on male, it's that whole old adage, isn't it, man up and things like that, and that toxic masculinity. So following the victim's disclosures about the abuse endured, the IDVA explained about safeguarding and what that entailed and the processes that would follow on from this, completed both the MARF, which is the multi-agency referral form, and the MARC, which is the multi-agency risk assessment conference. Support was provided to make a homelessness application to the local authority, and it was explained that the risk assessment would be shared to support the application whilst working alongside the housing team. As a result, the victim was placed in a higher priority banding. Refuge was considered, but there were no male refuges close to Bridgend that were available at that time. The victim explained that the emotional impact of the abuse has left him feeling weak and ashamed. As a man, he should be able to protect his family, and the IDVA completed one-to-one emotional support around tactics of perpetrators and the impact on the victims. The victim was also referred to the Compass programme, a therapeutic recovery programme for male victims of domestic abuse, and there's also been a referral to the integrated family support services. So as a result, the victim chose to stay at a friend's house until he was suitably rehoused, but was considered priority banding with housing, the waiting list for temporary accommodation. He also received safety alarms, which include personal alarm for himself, door wedge alarm, personalised safety plan, and contact details for out-of-hours support services. The victim will have support from the Compass programme in the next cohort and has also been invited to join the male victim focus group. The victim has stated he's in a much better place emotionally and is thankful for the support.
Are you returning to the report? Regional commissioning has taken place with New Pathways and with Barod, which is a substance misuse service. The worker with New Pathways offers sexual violence support and stabilisation work to identified victims, and the Barod role is a Valdres lead worker who will work with both victims and perpetrators where there are substances involved, in ensuring that we are addressing all the needs and working holistically to support that person. All staff are trained to support members of the LGBTQ+ community seeking support and work very closely with the Myriad programme, which is a buy-in full service for LGBTQ+ victims of domestic abuse to support recovery and resilience. The table and chart in 3.18 shows the fluctuating number of those identifying as LGBTQ+ identifying the service since March 2021. It should be noted that this information is reliant on disclosure and is not mandatory. So turning to how the service works with perpetrators and delivers on the third regional aim of holding perpetrators to account for their actions and support them to change their behaviour. Again, this is based on a categorisation of risk. High-risk cases are considered for the drive, which works with high harm, high risk and serial perpetrators of domestic abuse to prevent their negative actions and protect adult and child victims. Through the intervention, the perpetrator is engaged to identify and manage triggers and understand healthy relationships to disrupt and change abusive behaviours. Each perpetrator is looked at as an individual, as opposed to completing a one-size-fits-all programme, and there is a dedicated Drive IDVA who works very closely with the service. Medium risk cases are considered for driving change, for perpetrators who recognise their behaviour in intimate relationships is abusive and or violent and they want to change this. And standard risk cases are considered for change that lasts, early perpetrator release response, clear services with the individual service working closely with them to meet the needs of those who have identified that their behaviour is causing concern and are motivated to do something about it, but are not yet disclosing or taking responsibility for their abuse. This means earlier intervention and support for families. And again, I'm going to hand over to Wendy, who's got a case study for the Drive, the high risk perpetrator programme.
Okay, thank you. So the Drive is delivered by SMT, and they have caseworkers that work with, as Kirsty explained, high harm, high risk perpetrators. And we have the dedicated IDVA here then that works closely with the victim and will link in with the Drive caseworker every week to check what's happening. And a lot of the time, there's a lot of things that come up from that, and there's disruption activities then that are established going forward to keep the victim safe. So the victim was having ongoing issues with her ex-husband. She recognised that her ex was still trying to have control over her life and would also use their child as a form of control. The victim became known to services following a police report and after her ex threatened to kill her. Her ex was arrested and bailed. However, the case was later closed as it was classed as no further action, which meant that her ex could move back into the family home and that the IDVA would not be to safeguard the victim and the child. Drive became involved with the perpetrator following the police report. This involvement allowed the domestic abuse service to share relevant information and manage risk more effectively. Drive held weekly appointments with the perpetrator, completing work around healthy relationships, de-escalation, and working with him to recognise his behaviour was unacceptable towards both the victim and their child. During these sessions, he would often make comments and disclosures about his plan going forward. Where necessary, the Drive caseworker would share this with the IDVA. This in turn would enable the IDVA to process the situation and put measures in place to manage any risks. An example of this was when he said he would be taking their child overseas. The sharing of this information meant the IDVA was able to refer the victim to a solicitor to apply for a prohibited steps order, as there were concerns their child would not be returned. This has managed the risk and safeguarded the child. The victim shared her concerns also around her ex's issues with substances. The IDVA shared this information with the Drive worker for them to explore, and after many conversations with the perpetrator and with the encouragement from Drive, the perpetrator recognised he had an issue with alcohol and accepted referral to drug and alcohol services, leading to a reduced risk to both the victim and the child. It also meant that the perpetrator was building healthier coping strategies within themselves. As a result, the case is still open to both the Drive and IDVA service, and will be until the work with the perpetrator is completed. Sharing information within this case has clearly been very important to manage risks and prevent any escalations. The victim and her child have moved out of the family home and are in a safe temporary accommodation. And whilst the case goes through family court, the perpetrator is not to have any contact, but this can be deemed as a risk for escalation, as not seeing this child may trigger behaviours. The Drive workers' involvement at this stage is essential, as they can link in with the perpetrator and check that they are coping. This time will also allow Drive to help the perpetrator find a property of his own and refer to financial support should they need it. And this will hopefully give both the victim and perpetrator time to sort their separate and individual needs with their respective support in a managed way.
For the regional plan, which is ensuring services are designed and commissioned to meet the needs of the Cyntaf Morgannwg population. As I've mentioned, ASIA is a victim-led service and offers bespoke support depending on individual needs. The male victim focus group shows the partners they would like to engage, the topics they would like to discuss, and talk through the problems that they face as they see them. This is just one example of the way that we are trying to co-produce the service as much as we can, and are constantly looking to improve the service we deliver to reflect the changes and challenges in society. Staff have also undertaken stalking and advocacy training. This is expanding the support available to service users and offering more support towards partners, such as the police, that may not have that background, but we're able to offer that experience now. With regards to ensuring that services are fit for purpose and quality assured, the Regional Voucher SV Steering Group offers check and challenge, and we're also involved in the substantial national blueprint work that's currently underway. There are local processes like MARAC quality assurance and our own internal process around case file audits and supervision. Clinical supervision has also been put in place to support staff, as there is an obvious risk of vicarious trauma and the impact of negative mental health to those working in the service, and we want to protect the well-being of their team. It should be noted that recruitment has never been an issue for ASIA, and we're very proud of that fact. We also adhere to Safe Life guidance and are working towards achieving leading lights accreditation, which is a recognised gold standard. We're really hopeful of achieving that, which would be a big coup considering how short the service has been in its current iteration. Finally, the ASIA Domestic Abuse Service demonstrates a sustainable development principle by ensuring that by meeting the needs of the present, it does not compromise the ability of future generations to meet their needs. There are no climate change or financial implications resulting from this report, and in considering how we tackle violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence, Bridgend County Borough Council is ensuring that all people living in Bridgend are safe and protected. That brings a summary of the update to an end, and it's recommended that Cabinet Committee Equalities note the content of this substantial update report. Many thanks.
Thank you, Kirsty. That was really good. Very important, informative report, and I'm really glad to see there's so many equality strands evidence in that we've looked at. I'm sure the deputy leader will talk about care leaves, but I'll leave her to that. And thank you, Wendy, for presenting the case studies. I mean, we've recently had social media out, haven't we? Because we are so many people have contacted us, contacted the leader to say how without your support their life would not be what it is today. So big thank you to you and to your team for providing the service that you do. On that note, I'll go over to the deputy leader who's already moved the report for her question. Thank you, deputy.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was really informative, and the case studies, I think, really make the service come to life. And I'm really pleased to see so much information, and I want to say the reflective policy across the region, because I think that's really helpful when all partners are working to the same aims. So it's really very linked up. I did note from your case study, one of your older person's case study, you didn't reference any family impact, and I wondered if there was any work going on with the family, because if we're talking about breaking cycles, that needs to be undertaken as well. I was really impressed to hear some of the supportive measures and the way you're co-producing. It's one of my favourite words. I know there's little understanding about what that means, but we always have better solutions and better outcomes when our constituents are involved in the design of services. And I was really pleased to hear about the clinical supervision. I think I do have an interest in this. I used to live under a public protection notice, as you're all aware. When I stood for council, it meant that I had to disclose where I was living at the time, which we don't have to do anymore. I still have a tag on my phone. If I dial 999, I'll get an immediate armed response, which I really don't want to do, which is why I try and dial the 911 number quite often, or I'll send things in. Twitter Messenger is much easier to manage, just a point of reference. And I think the thing that I wanted to ask you was, we don't seem to have any, I can see all the work that you're doing, and you've got an awful lot of referrals, but what I can't see is any outcomes, the focused outcomes. What does that actually mean? Any, I want to say some survey of services, because if we've got that information, I think that gives us a better indication of how the service is going. And I'm not disputing the impact that you're having across the county borough. I think it's marvellous. So I am really, really impressed with all of this. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Jet. I think you must have been reading some of my question, because I put down about stats, status, outcomes.
Yeah. And please, not ongoing. Don't like ongoing.
No, I don't like that word ongoing, but we've got no control over, because that's it. But maybe that's something we can bring up when we go to the regional group, say, this is frowned on. Did you want to respond, Wendy or Kirsty, to the deputy?
I'm happy to pick up some points. In terms of family involvement, there is some information, but in order to protect anonymity, we can't go
No,
into.
that's fine.
But yes. In terms of outcomes, we have been discussing how we can better chart journeys. But obviously a successful outcome will look differently for each individual person. So putting in a blanket metric will be quite difficult, but we need, well, to satisfy our funders, we need to demonstrate positive outcomes. So there is some work around the housing support grant that funds a lot of the IDFAs to make sure that we are achieving positive outcomes. But defining what that positive outcome looks like will be different for every person. But yeah, I think in the longer term, for demonstrating the impact of the service, we are looking to be a lot more outcome focused. And perhaps doing a survey of those who have gone through to get some feedback would be great. But as the chair mentioned, we've recently promoted some social media things. We do collect, we get some really positive notes in, where we get really good feedback. That's all charted. And within the last week, we've had a letter or an email in from the daughter of Asia to say, I'm really proud to have my mum's name above the service.
Oh,
So to me, there is no greater positive feedback that we could get.
Yeah.
And as far as the housing support grant, their outcomes have become more softer outcomes, whereas before it was more, I say numbers, you know, it's now taken into account the actual journey, which I think is a lot more important, because it for me it's not about the quantitative, it's about the qualitative data. So it's what goes beyond that, and I think we're getting better now at starting to capture those things as well. So and there are things available if people, you know, members want to see them.
Thank you. Can I bring in Councillor Thomas, please?
Thanks very much, Chair. Can I just first of all thank Kirsty and Wendy for the report today, and to thank all colleagues that work in and around the ASIA service. It's certainly not a role for the light-hearted. You support people in some of the most harrowing circumstances. You go home, you come back the following day, and you do it all over again. So I think you deserve our thanks for what you do in helping to support some of the most vulnerable people across the county. Chair, I have a handful of questions. I'm in your hands as to whether you want to take them all in one go or one by one.
Kirsty and Wendy, how would you like them?
All in one go.
All in one go, they've said.
Yeah,
Please.
okay, that's absolutely fine. So in terms of the referral rates, which is mentioned in the report, and I'd agree with the Deputy Leader, first of all, Chair, in that the case studies really has helped put things into perspective. But with the referrals, obviously there's quite a big difference in the number of referrals made and the number of referrals accepted. So I'm querying, what do we do where people aren't accepting of a referral? So that's my first question. My second question is around housing, and Wendy, in your last case study, you mentioned housing. So I wondered how we work with colleagues. Could you tell us how we work with colleagues around housing options to provide that wraparound support? So I know in terms of social housing, the new Renting Homes Wales Act has given greater protection to survivors of domestic abuse in terms of targeting the perpetrators for eviction. So that's a huge positive. But how do we provide that where that's not possible and the survivor of domestic abuse and violence wants to move out of their current property? How do we provide that wraparound support to ensure that it's sustainable and ongoing? Because sometimes if we begin withdrawing services, that can lead to lots of different issues arising, really. So really interested in how we work with colleagues in housing. Also interested in the number of independent advocates we actually have in the service and their caseloads. And I'm basing this on having been a member of the Social Services Scrutiny Committee. There are clearly baseline caseloads for social workers. Do we have those sorts of baselines for independent advocates, and what do they look like compared to perhaps other local authorities? Because I can imagine when the service is under pressure, those independent advocates are probably handling a number of very complicated, complex and harrowing cases. And lastly, it's quite a general question. Do you believe, Wendy and Kirsty, that we have made sufficient progress as a society in ensuring that domestic abuse is everybody's business? And if we are aware of it, then it's our duty to either support that individual or to report it to services so that they can access support one way or the other. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Very good questions. Over to you two.
Remember which was the first one now. So thank you. There are some really good questions. So from a referral aspect of it, when you say, and there is a big difference between the referrals made to the referrals accepted, and within that, when we say referrals accepted, it might be that that person is already within the services, so they're already being supported, but it's another referral coming through. So either another PPN or somebody in another organisation might have identified and they're referring in, but actually that person is already within our services. It could be that services being declined, or actually there is no domestic abuse. So when we look at it, it's not an appropriate referral. I suppose our biggest barrier is where we can't contact somebody. So we've accepted the referral in as much, but then we're not able to make contact with that person at all. And I suppose that's with what our biggest barrier is, I suppose. But that's still constantly, we constantly try to make those contacts. We're in touch with every single agency that we can. If we know someone's involved, we'll do everything we can then to make those joint visits, go in through different guises. We've gone in as undercover health visitor assistants, whatever it takes for us to try and make contact, we will. But invariably, you'll always get times when you just can't, no matter what you do. So therefore, then it's just making sure we're sending out safety plans to that person's address with all of our contact details, in hoping that they'll come back. Yeah, so a lot of them are repeat referrals, but also then is the barrier of not being able to contact people. I hope that's answered that question for you. Then going on to housing, we work so closely with housing. We've really built up a really good relationship with housing of late. And what happens if somebody does come in and they're fleeing there and then, the IDVA will sit down and do the homeless application with them. We will then refer on to the homeless triage department with the RIC and also with a referral, so that they're not actually going through those questions again. The victim's not having to repeat itself. The housing team are well aware at that point this person needs emergency accommodation. We will obviously go down the refuge route first, but for some people refuge isn't appropriate. For whatever reasons, it might be there's a lot of complex needs there that refuge can't accommodate, or it might be that there's no refuge available in this area and they need their own support network around them within this area and need to stay in this area. And for some, simply, they don't want to go into refuge. And, you know, a person needs that choice, irrespective of what's going on, you know, and some victims will say, why do I have to do all of this? And yes, you do have those challenges, we can have those conversations with them, because it's about safeguards in them. And it might mean that they only go into refuge for a week or two, just while we get all of those safety measures put on their property to bring them back, or try and get the perpetrator removed via a domestic violence protection notice, which the police can go in, remove that person for 48 hours, then get a domestic violence protection order, which will remove that person then for 28 days, which gives us a lot of chance then to do a lot of work to maintain their housing. But if they are going into temporary accommodation, we will then make sure they've got that wraparound support after them. So we've had times when I've actually had people in my car and we've taken them to wherever they're going, or we get some kind of transport, or the team will take them, but then we go on then to make sure they've got that one-to-one support going forward to help them sustain that. Number of IDVAs and caseloads, the team has really expanded. I've got to say I think we're one of 17, but that actually, with a team of 17, but that includes the MARIC coordinator, business support, the team leader and the manager. So we've probably got about 13, 14 IDVAs, along that with different roles, of course. Safe Lives say an IDVA high-risk case should be around 25 to 30 cases. And I think that sits in line with ourselves. We've got the high risk team, which will carry the most crisis driven cases. And they generally have about 35, but bearing in mind that's with constant case reviews. So there's no waiting list at all for the high risk cases. And then our community IDVIS will probably carry a caseload of anything between 12 and 18, depending on how intense those cases are, because they're then doing that longer term support in cases where we had the male victim IDVA case study and the older person case study. That's community work, so that's a lot of ongoing work. And we can do those cases and give them that because for me it's about turning that around, giving that person that self-esteem, that self-confidence, so we're not having that revolving door. So we need the time to be able to do that. And on the back of that, we've now got the waiting list IDVA, which also, if there is anybody on a waiting list, bearing in mind that won't be high risk, but anybody who's classed as medium risk and standard risk who needs that ongoing support, we now have somebody that manages the waiting list. So they are contacted every 2 weeks to make sure risk hasn't changed, and we're linking in with that person as well. And then you've got the court IDVA, who will just deal with everybody that's going through the criminal court. And there's no set number on that. That's probably about, I would say probably about 16 at any one time. No, I'm okay. Thank you. What was the last one?
Sufficient progress in making domestic abuse everyone's business.
I think there probably is sufficient progress, and this is just my own opinion now. I think there probably is sufficient progress in making domestic abuse everyone else's business. I think that's part of the reason why we're having more and more referrals, because I think there's now a lot more awareness out there. We're getting calls from sometimes neighbours, from other people now, whereas people I think used to think it's nothing to do with me, it's between them. Hence that thing, it was always behind closed doors. So I think that's becoming more and more evident, thankfully. It makes more work, but that's okay. I'd rather see him walking through the doors. I know it's a double-edged sword, but I'd rather see him walking through the doors or picking up that phone. And I hope that covers everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your responses. Really refreshing, very comprehensive. Diolch.
Thank you. Councillor Stansfield.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd just like to second the report. I'm not sure if it's been done just to form as that. And thanks, Wendy and Kirsty, for producing the report today. But also a massive thank you to the team. Because it's one of the areas I've only ever received positive feedback on what goes on. There's a lot of work you don't see, but there's some great feedback. The area I'd like to sort of, not so much question, but it's discussed was the male victim focus group, which is great to see that taking place. And there's been guest speakers from Connected Dads, Employability, Community Navigators I mentioned. There's also Lads and Dads, which are really good support group. Even though it started off 4 years ago in Bracklow with half a dozen of them. Now with something like 2,000 people engaging. Mostly done over social media, but some sort of confidential social media. And it's very useful for us to link in with them at some point. They do loads of activities and they're a growing force. The bit disappointing is the police officer, the example there in 315, the police officer making a negative comment. I wonder whether, I think it's touched on PSOs are in training, but is there clearly a training need within police officers themselves? That not really, I'm not sure what training they get in this area, and then more work, clearly there's more work to be done with that. The police officer, you tell somebody to do a man or a mouse. Well, it's not really. So it'd be interesting to see, because the police don't get involved with this group, but they are involved with wider groups, I suppose, contact mechanic and things. So, but question about training the police officers. And on the last one of the questions that comes about Penn and Thomas, mentioned links with housing. Councillor Stanley, who was in surgery several weeks ago, an individual was totally happy with the service with ASIA. Been, great service there. The problem was then the link with housing. That was the link with housing, where it then became a year had passed and the problem was housing. We have a massive problem with housing and there's no magic bullet to fix it. But clearly she was at the risk. He dealt with all the services you had, but then The other part of the council, when it comes to housing, that was a bit that, well, that's what the council, the wider mentioned social landlords. Any thoughts on how we can try and improve the relationships are working, but it's down to physical properties and dealing with more people, I suppose.
Yeah.
That was clearly a problem, but the risk continued because there wasn't housing there. Any thoughts on that?
Well, your first point, as in lads and dads, we've got a meeting with lads and dads on April the 10th.
Marvellous. Didn't say that up.
So yeah, so that's all ongoing, and we've done some work with lads and dads too. Housing, you're right. I wish I could wave a magic wand, but it is down to those physical properties. Housing is in crisis, and yes, we can put all the practical support in, we can put all the emotional support in. I don't know the answers to them, sadly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the comprehensive report and echo the contribution that comes to panel. Thomas, just thanks really on behalf of all the union members. I certainly have only ever received positive feedback about the work that you do, and I think I recently shared some positive feedback. And I have to say as well, it was from someone, and perhaps this just goes to show there's a lot of work to do. So subconscious bias, where unconscious bias and subconscious bias, but from an individual I never thought, who contacted me confidentially to say that she was a victim of domestic abuse. Never thought that person would be, but it can happen to anyone, can't it?
Absolutely.
What I wanted to reference was the work with the police, because that has been touched on, isn't it, by Councillor Spandic and others. It was timely yesterday, myself and Councillor Farr had our quarterly meeting with the Police and Crime Commission, Chief Superintendent, the Assistant Chief Constable, and actually they provide analysis to us on domestic abuse and violence, which when we first started having those meetings we didn't have, and I've seen a sea change in the approach of South Wales Police, I have to say. But what is of interest is that actually, I will share the information. We only discussed it yesterday, maybe not in terms of report, but it is interesting, and I don't know what conclusions to draw from this, but actually the number of reports of crimes and occurrences of domestic violence is falling. South Wales Police are receiving, and yet we're receiving more referrals, and that drop is not insignificant. It's a 10% reduction in the number of occurrences. Now there's still 3,600 occurrences, still a lot, but 360 less is a lot less. And also the number of crimes has seen a gradual decline as well. That said, there's still 50% of the domestic abuse scores leads to a criminal investigation. Some of the reasons that you've identified are probably the same, but I think what we probably need to do is jointly do some work together to look at that picture. So I will share the analysis with you, and South Wales Police are blessed with more resources than us, so they've got a team of analysts. Well, I say team, they're probably bigger than our asset speed. So hopefully we can do some work together to try and work out what is happening, because that just doesn't. Now, it might be that it's better that people come to us instead of going to South Wales Police, because with respect to South Wales Police, whilst they will support victims, their focus is on treating it as a crime. And the people who come to us, I'm assuming, obviously, it's a different approach sometimes, because people don't necessarily want it to be regarded as a crime. They may just want support. So this may be a positive, but we need to do some work, I think. So that one, it's not a question really, it's a suggestion, but stroke a question for colleagues, but I'll share that information. And then this is a question. I'm really pleased to see that we've got that specialist work around child victims and what we can do to support them. We did some work a few years ago in our schools. I think this was pre-COVID, to raise awareness, because unfortunately we know that the patterns of domestic abuse can start very early, can't they? And we want to try and prevent perpetration, don't we? If at all possible, because that's the best way to learn the long term to support the victims of less victims. And I don't know where we are with that work. And again, I think we need to consider doing joint work with the police. So they're having to restructure their support service in schools because of a change to funding regime, which I think will have wider implications for us, by the way. But what we can't do is lose our focus on the importance of positive relationships. And also being clear as well, and this is where our work with the police will be important, and our work will be important, that actually domestic abuse is a crime and it can't be tolerated. And we need to get that message across to young people in a managed, clear way. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think you're right. There is a lot more work that needs to be done with the police. Absolutely. I think there's still a massive lack of trust from victims through their own experiences. And we've done an awful lot of work when we're dealing with victims about encouraging them to support, encouraging them to report. So it's about building all of that back up again. And that's working. You know, we're having people coming in and we're like, I'm not reporting. And then slowly we've got them to report and things like that, just by explaining things properly. I think a lot of people just have their own visualization. So when you sit down and explain it, when we break it down, I think people get a lot better understanding then, and they see it as a more supportive part then from the police, and a more positive thing. So yeah, but there's still a lot to be done. Talking about the young person coming in, I think when we identified that gap, I think one of the biggest things for me were we were having a lot of parents coming through saying that their children were being violent, and children were being classed as perpetrators. And for me, if you're a child, you're not a perpetrator. You're a young person who needs that support. So for me, it was like there's a massive gap here, and we need to be trying to, because of course the Chidford wouldn't be dealing with that, because the Chidford is dealing with children as victims from familial abuse. So for me, it was like, what do we do then? We need to be going back into the schools and doing those healthy relationships and looking at that, and misogyny and all of those different types of things, talking about those things, bringing it to life. But also it was about supporting these young people who were displaying potential perpetrator traits going forward. And what do we do? And chances are they're probably victims of things themselves. So for me, it was about getting in there and thinking, right, what can we do then? And then that's your early preventative work as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that the CS sits under partnerships, because this is all partnership working. The impact of the loss of the school liaison officer with the police is going to be really, really wide impacting. But linking in with cohesion. So I know that the regional cohesion team have recently underdone safe spaces online training to mitigate misogynistic behaviours online, which is directly impacting then on the domestic abuse service. So it's about joining all those things together as well, so that we're all working to the same agenda. We're just coming at it from different ways, because we don't want to criminalise people. We don't want to brandish people as perpetrators when they could be victims themselves.
Thank you.
Can I just say, sorry, Councillor Spanswick, what you said about the housing has just been, as it does, it starts going round and round in your mind then. How can we do something to that? So I'm distracted. But I do think maybe there's a lot of more joined up work that we could be doing then if we can't get them moved. It is, as you say, as you've gone in, we've done all of that. We do try to bring in other agencies, but maybe maybe we need to be, I don't know, looking at some kind of strategy where in those cases there's a lot more people with those eyes on there, rather than just, because we can't wave that magic wand. We can't find properties that aren't available. So I think we need to do a lot more joined up working, not just, right, as you've done their thing right now, it's onto housing. Maybe we need to be taking responsibility as a council, as a network, to see what can we do instead. And that's going to be done on an individual basis. And maybe we are missing some stuff.
Okay, can I bring Councillor Evans in, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Kirsty and Wendy, for that fully comprehensive report. It was well received, so thank you very much, and thank you for the work that you are doing. For me, mine is around, obviously, page 27 with regards to the plan. It's very similar to what has already been mentioned, but I also want to try and put a few suggestions as well. I mean, for me, the plan identifies with 6 main objectives and 46 actions, but yet it's not clear on what the key objectives are. I mean, I noticed in the plan there is very little, if anything, as well written in the progress column, and also identified that the majority of timescales set for in the plan are either ongoing or very, very broad. I mean, therefore, I was wondering then if consideration could be given to setting more specific, measurable, achievable, realistic timescales to support the prioritisation, progress and delivery of the plan going forward. And also, I note that the service was brought in-house in May 21 and a restructure of the services implemented in April 22. I'm wondering, since the service has been brought in-house and the new framework implemented, have you seen any improvement and what change has happened since it's been brought in-house, please? I've got one last question, Chair, if you would indulge me as well. It's also mentioned in 3.4 that the team may have separate specialisms and or dedicated roles, however, all receive the same in-depth training, which is refreshing to hear, so that's wonderful. So they can support each other during times of sickness and leave. What I would like to understand is what percentage of sickness do you have in that service, please? Thank you.
Councillor Evans?
Really? Percentage of sickness.
You wouldn't have that data.
I mean, you could come back with that data, send me an email, I can send it out to everybody.
Could get
Some
data.
of the data.
Yeah. I would say, I think sickness isn't high. Obviously there is a percentage of sickness, there always will be in any service, but absolutely we can come back with those actual figures. But I think what we've done is we put an awful lot in, not just as like case reviews. There's case reviews every 4 to 8 weeks. So we're looking at every single review so that it's not held on the shoulders of that person. There's line management supervision every 6 to 8 weeks, and there's clinical supervision every 4 weeks. And also I've got an open door policy. I come into the civic every day. It's very rarely I'm not in the civic. And the same as the team leader, because for me it's about supporting that team. And it's when they've come off the phone or when they've just picked up a PPN and they're like, oh God, I'm not really quite sure about this. Or they've just taken that difficult call where they've just had raw emotion on that call, or there's a real sense of what do I do? We're there and we're there to support them through that. And I think that's probably had an impact. I hope anyway, that's probably had an impact on their resilience and their sickness from that point of view. I don't think we've had, and I could be wrong, but I don't think we've had a sickness yet where it's work-related stress. I think it's been more things about maybe things that have going on at home or where there's physical illness. What else was there? Sorry.
To pick up the point of the plan, I think that's a common theme. It isn't a plan that we own locally. It is from the regional steering group. We're taking it on board, and possibly when we look at how we look at potentially a more localized plan, there would be smarter targets on that. So even though the objective may be broad around raising the profile of Bowder SV, we'll have really tangible things that sit underneath it. So, you know, things we want to achieve each quarter, maybe that's a marketing campaign, that's maybe targeting specific social groups, but we would look to work smarter and have more fixed outcomes on that. So when did you think you've seen improvement?
Oh my gosh. No, that was a loaded question. So have we seen improvement since coming in-house? Yes. And I think just the amount of referrals that have come in and have almost doubled, and the male victim side of it. And I think we've done a lot of work on awareness. We've done a lot of work on making sure people are aware of what we, not just you know, not just about a domestic abuse service, but what that domestic abuse service entails and how we can support people, and not just how we support the victims, but how we support other professionals as well. You know, it's about saying to them, just pick up the phone. If you're not sure what you're dealing with, pick up the phone. Let us take over that aspect of it. We go into a lot more team meetings. We're really getting our name out there. The team has grown, and yes, they all get their IDVA qualification. For me, you can't do this role without. For me, that's a basic. If you're doing an IDVA role, you need that IDVA qualification. But on top of that, there's that non-fatal strangulation training that everyone has. It's HPV, honour-based violence, female genital mutilation, how to even, you know, if you've got a same-sex relationship coming in, how do we work out who's the perpetrator and who's the victim? You know, there's so many different streams of it. I probably couldn't even think of them all now, but absolutely, there's all of that basis training. And I think just by the fact that the team has grown, I think it shows the improvement that we've made. It works completely differently. And if I'm honest, when I first came in as somebody that had been third sector for so many years, for 20 odd years within this sector, and then coming into a local authority, first of all, I was like, why are we in the civic offices? We need to be somewhere else where people can, you know. And there is a part of me that still thinks we need to be elsewhere, but we're doing that. We're doing that in so many other different ways, by going to different places. But a couple of weeks ago, somebody came in, and the IDVA, she came in with the perpetrator, because the perpetrator goes everywhere with her. But we were able to say that the IDVA was a housing officer. So there was the person was sat in reception while the IDVA was in with the person, and the guys were a housing officer. So I think it was actually the first time that I thought, yeah, we're in the right place, really. It was taking a long time for me to think that.
I'm proud to hear that.
I think it's also important that we are a continually improving service as well. So I'm doing Safe Lives Service Manager training to improve my knowledge and be able to make sure I'm supporting Wendy as best I can. But there's also two IDVAs on the course with me. So it's not a case of you're IDVA qualified, you've done enough. It's what's next.
Developing.
Always developing the staff as well.
Developing.
Can I just come in, Chair, on that, just to come back? It is extremely refreshing to hear. And would I be right to say then, actually, you and your team have enjoyed shaping, developing and co-producing this service in-house?
Definitely. It's my passion. It's I live and breathe it, and so do the team. I couldn't do what I do without the team behind me. They're an amazing team. I couldn't talk about them enough.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. I can say from senior management's perspective that since they've brought it in-house, and since Wendy's become the manager, it's changed it completely around. So that's from senior manager saying that to me, Wendy. Thank you. Councillor Winston, please.
Thank you, Chair. There's a lot of points that have been already covered by people that I was going to bring up. So thank you to everybody who's contributed. I'd like to sort of hone in on what we can do in schools to improve things. I think there may be a link also with the absence of children who are in family situations where there is abuse, which could be 2 or 3 way, but certainly 2 way. And you're just thinking, what can we do to support those families, and what are we doing to ensure those children are in school in a safer place, and what are we doing to support them? And I'd also pick up on Councillor Spanswick's point about housing. It's really, really important to get the housing in right. And sometimes it might be we may have to think outside the box and work out how we're going to do this, because people have got complex needs.
Absolutely.
And the further point I just want to ask about as well is what are we doing to ensure to talk to perpetrators to improve their behaviour, because I think some perpetrators probably don't know what they're doing and don't think of it as abuse, and that's probably a wider society thing. There's a huge amount, obviously, in society at the moment that is very poisonous, and with the online debates that we get and attitudes, and how do we cut through to that to try and ensure that we have good standards for everybody? So that's an easy one for you.
Well, from a school's perspective, I think there is a lot of work being done. I think on an individual basis, you know, if we've got a victim that's got children in school and there's a risk that needs to be managed around that, the advis will always link in with the schools, look at, you know, maybe if the child can come in 10 minutes later or leave 10 minutes earlier, just so that the victim is there before any potential safeguarding of the perpetrator. And schools are really on board with things. So on a one-to-one basis, there's a lot of good work that goes on that's nobody's even aware of, because it's done on an individual basis. And schools are often, and it's that barrier as well with victims to say, look, can we include the school with this? Can we speak to the head teacher? Can we do this? And there is some reluctance, but ultimately most of them will say yes in the end. And then you're talking to the head teachers and the headmasters, so they're aware of what's going on. So if the perpetrator is turning up at the schools, there's obviously PR involved. So the perpetrator is well within their right to, you know, take the children away because of PR. But in a lot of cases, the schools will then link in with the victim and say, you know, just to let you know, they've turned up at the school. We can hold the child or children here for a little while. So there's other ways of working. But I also think from a broader point of view, maybe there's a lot of training that we can come in and do with teachers and things like that. So on identifying and those little flags going on and thinking, is there something that's going on here? So it's not just your safeguarding, but it's the domestic abuse awareness training as well. So if somebody's coming in and they're consistently not doing their homework, why are they not doing their homework? What's going on at home? You know, it's all of those little things, and we're happy to come in and do training with schools and everything. And now we've got the YPVA, the Young Persons Violence Advocate, that will be going in and doing those healthy relationship working as well. I think that's a better link in and a better network with the schools as well, because we've got a single point of contact there as well. So I think those things are certainly improving and are needed.
Thank you. Councillor Williams?
Thank you very much. My camera's now working thanks to IT's magic in the background. Yeah, my question, thank you for the report. It was very detailed, and it was good to listen to all of those case studies. But my question is something I've raised as a governor in the past. We've been told we had to, well, it was recommended that we adopt the domestic violence and abuse against women policy as governing bodies. But my question is, and from your report, that the incidence involving male domestic abuse is quite low compared to female abuse. So I wondered what we're doing to ensure that we're covering males as well, because that policy we've adopted is simply violence against women, and it will make men think we're not considering them. So I wondered what we're doing to combat that. Thank you.
I think there's a lot more. Thank you for that. Sorry. I think there's a lot more awareness now that we're going through with the public to raise awareness that we've now got male victim IDVA on board, and that awareness is going through. I think also the fact that we've now doubled our male victims coming in, I think that's working. Is there more to do? Of course there is. There's always more to do. The VAWDA SV policy is, you know, is something every service and organisation now has to have from a Welsh Government's point of view. Is there something we could do here around male abuse? I don't know. As a separate policy, maybe. I don't know.
I think that's some of the blueprint work ongoing. There's a lot of strands underneath this blueprint about understanding current provision, where there may be gaps, where there may be more that we can do in those spaces. So we'll take that back to the blueprint working groups around, do we need a specific policy? I mean, we talk about gender-based violence, and I think there's been this long-standing assumption that gender-based means violence against women. You know, it is violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence. So we need to be more explicit about violence against men, don't know, but it's certainly something we can discuss at the regional group and then take it to the national groups for consideration.
Thank you. So that's one of the recommendations to take back, see if we can address that, which I think is a really, really valid point, because, you know, the report shows domestic abuse against male, whether it's same-sex male or female to male. There's no more questions on the screen. I've got a few questions, if that's okay. I waited till last. Mine's more to do with, I guess, data and performance indicator, because in order for you to continue with your funding and continue to say that we're a really progressive service, you've got to show performance indicators. So my question will be around some of the data. So on 3.5, where we're applying for the leading light, I'm just wondering, is there a time frame when that work's got to be done by? Because I think you did apply for it, but there was something missing.
Yeah, what happens with the leading lights is it's an accreditation that you go for. That there's a massive amount of work, and on the back of it, there's 3 decisions, and that's basically yes, you've achieved the leading lights, no, you haven't. Or what they will do in some cases is they will give you a couple of months. They can see there's a lot of good work going on. They give you a couple of months and say, right, if you can show us that now over the next couple of months, we can relook at it. And bear in mind, when we went for that, I think we'd had the restructure for 1 year. So we were really, as a restructured service, we were a year old, which is quite ambitious to have gone for a leading lights accreditation at that point. And when they did the assessment, they saw a lot of good work and said, actually, going to give you a couple of months and see if you can just implement those couple of things, or evidence that those things are implemented. And they were things like there was no specific risk register and things like that for that service. And so we're now having we've just submitted everything, and we're having our assessment on Friday. So it's been a tough week. So we got a full assessment now on Friday with the leading lights, and what they will do then is the assessor will make her recommendations, and then that will go to panel, and I think it goes to panel in about 2 months' time. And then they will decide whether we get the accreditation or not. Can I just say as well, there's only 2 people at the moment in Wales, 2 organisations in Wales that have that accreditation. It's not an easy one to get.
And I think it'd also be fair to say that the way that Safe Lives go through the accreditation process, it is geared more towards third sector provision. So demonstrating things like satisfying your
I mean, Safe Lives, they just take everything to the nth degree, don't they? I mean, they're so meticulous and everything. The amount of evidence we've had to submit is incredible, but that does take into account data. It does take into account what you're hitting, the outcomes you're hitting, but also from a strategic point of view and for a case point of view, how are you managing those victims? It's all, they're geared more around the high risk aspect of it.
Board of Trustees, that's the word I was looking for. So it would be a much more straightforward way of proving that you're satisfying your funders, your Board of Trustees, whereas
Local authorities,
we report to so many different bodies, scrutiny boards, regional boards, partnership boards, that one clear line was a lot harder to evidence.
Yeah.
I think we've overwhelmed them a little bit. So hopefully we're unpicking their way through it.
Okay, 3.19 and 3.20, you've mentioned in your report. I'm just wondering, do we have any stats? What kind of success rate do we have working with perpetrators? That's one of the questions. Looking at the development plan, you've already explained this is a regional plan, so we can't really do anything with it. But I'm just wondering, what are the possibilities of us having our own localized plan with these 6 objectives? Because from the report, from the presentation, you do so much work, but it's not evidence here. So, I mean, I've put things like, can we change the word ongoing to a date, even if it's a review date, we've looked at it, we haven't achieved it, why we haven't achieved it, and then just give another date. And then I just put things like, where is the update? Where's the data? Where's the report? But like I said, this is not ours really, is it? So from I would suggest a recommendation. Could we have our own plan? Because we are doing so much good work. So the other things I've got here, like we've talked about housing needs and stuff. So if we had our own local plan, we'd know, because we can go to the housing and say things like that. The referrals that we have, we've talked about is mainly partners abuse to each other, but do we have adult children abusing parents? Those kind of referrals come in to us. Do we have carers abuse? But then I guess that would go down to safeguarding route as well. And do we have any male refugees?
There are male refugees. I think with Clymai that are the refuge provision, they've got standalone properties, and there's. I mean, I just go from my old hat from my third sector role. I mean, when I was a refuge manager, and there's units in places like Merthyr. We got some in Bridgend, but there's units in Merthyr and across where they're self-contained. And I think that's also to protect, because obviously shared houses where there's refugees, I think it's more difficult. So I think they have to be self-contained units, and I think that's to protect both aspects. But there are not as many as people would like, but there are.
And also I was thinking, you were saying that you go out into the communities to offer service, have you linked in with employabilities and libraries to see who we do pop-up stuff there? You do. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Bring back the deputy.
Thanks very much. I don't disagree with your comment about having a plan, but I would just suggest that we have an additional box on here so that we can see where we're measuring against the regional plan as well. So we'll get all the regional data and then we'll have specific Bridgend data, rather than reinventing the wheel, because we are part owners in this plan. So it might be worthwhile doing it that way rather than creating another piece of work.
Because we're still going to meet those objectives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that. So you've got several recommendations to take back with. Are there any other questions from anybody?
Thanks, Chair. It was just a suggestion the next time we consider this and the progress that we're making, that we invite along representatives of South Wales Police, because I think it's right that we obviously look at it through the lens of how we can support the victims, but we can't lose sight of the fact that this is a crime, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Sometimes it has the most serious implications, sadly, for people living in the county borough, and it has to be treated with it, and it is treated with the utmost seriousness. But we have to work together with South Wales Police and indeed with other partners. And I would say that South Wales Fire and Rescue Service have rightly come in for a lot of criticism recently, but actually one area where they were applauded actually was in the field of domestic abuse, and the work that certainly their former chief fire officer undertook. And I think it's also important to recognise that it's the point that goes down Thomas's name, but I think it's worth repeating that all our agencies have a role, so we might want to think as well about, for example, inviting health colleagues along, because this is also a health issue, isn't it? Where it has a profound impact on people's physical and mental health, and probably alongside schools, that's the other big area of potential referral, or shouldn't it? Is our nurses and A&E departments, and trying to better recognise those victims that may present for different reasons, when the underlying cause and reason is that actually they're a victim of domestic abuse. So I think it would be helpful if we invited those partners along, and perhaps had an update, particularly from the Health Board, actually about what they're doing. We can certainly ask for that at that strategic level as well, because it doesn't feel like health have been, I'm sure they are involved, but perhaps not as involved in that at that strategic level in a way that we want to be.
Great, thank you very much. No more questions. I'll move on to the agenda. So next item is urgent items. I haven't had any urgent items. So can I thank both Kirsty and Wendy for their presentation. And again, if any of the members here would like to speak to any of us in confidence regarding anything that's at the case studies or anything that may have triggered anything, please come and speak to us. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chair.